Hi, I'm James Shillinglaw for Insider Travel Report, and I'm here today with Jason Block, who's CEO of WorldVIA Travel Group. Now, I've known Jason for a while, and I've seen him at Travel Leaders Network. As I was telling him earlier, he just keeps going up there and getting awards for his agency. So we knew about that, but we wanted to sit down with him about WorldVIA and also talk a little bit about what he sees in trends in the market. So we're going to talk about all that and more on Insider Travel Report. Now, Jason, first of all, great to see you. Sorry it's virtual, but we'll have to do it live one of these days.
Absolutely. Great to see you, James. Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
Okay, so first of all, let's tell us a little bit about WorldVIA. I've been watching it for a while. I think the first time, my first experience there was when you bought, I guess, Travel Quest a few years back, and then you've been buying up agencies. But tell us, when did you start the group, and how big is it now?
Sure. So I started what is now WorldVIA in 2014, and it's a travel holding company. And when I started it, the objective was to seek out, high performing agencies across a number of different segments of travel. And so from 2015 to 2018, we acquired and merged with a number of agencies across retail, corporate, humanitarian, and hosting. And since that time, we've been working to grow the business under the WorldVIA Travel Group brand, and we operate in all of those segments. We're based in Atlanta, Georgia, and we expect to be around the 300 million mark by the end of the year for
Wow.
2024. So we're continuing to grow, and all of our businesses really have a service culture emphasis, whether it's in corporate or in our hosting business. Growth is pretty important, but you can't do it at the sacrifice of service. So that's kind of one of our hallmarks, and how we've gone about our growth process.
Now, roughly how many travel advisors do you host now?
We have around 3,000 independent
Wow.
advisors, or agency owners, as we call them, across the country, and that has steadily grown since TravelQuest came into our family. Our host agency has rebranded to WorldVIA Travel Network.
Okay.
That was earlier this year, but that business has steadily grown over the years, and we've made a lot of investments in that business to make sure that we're the premier agency for someone who wants to be an entrepreneur, who wants to start and build and operate a successful travel business. And we want to make sure we're adding more value to their business than any other host out there. And I think that's kind of the thing that has driven a lot of that growth. And we're seeing folks coming from certainly new to industry, but also increasingly from some of our competitors. So
Yeah.
while we don't wish any competitor ill will, we do like to see that industry acknowledgement of the value we're looking to provide is coming through.
So you've had a pretty fast growth. So have you grown mostly through acquisition or just incrementally through getting more travel advisors?
We haven't done any acquisitions since 2018, and most of the growth, or all the growth since then, has been organic and investing in our businesses. So our strategy was to build a platform, really, in different segments, and then to organically grow them.
Now, what are your specialties in travel? I mean, I assume you do a little corporate, little leisure mix. I mean, what do you focus on?
Yeah, across our portfolio, we do have a presence in corporate. We have a really terrific TMC called Safe Harbors that operates in the mid-market niche space. A lot of humanitarian clients, really high-touch service model, big differentiator from some of the mega TMCs. In our hosting business, and WorldVIA Travel Network, our advisors really run the gamut in terms of their specializations. I mean, sure, there's an awful lot of cruises and destination weddings and honeymoons and those kinds of things, but there's also just a tremendous number of niche specialists, everything from things like polka concert tours to
Well, that's a niche.
yeah, absolutely, and dark sky tourism, sci-fi and fantasy travel. I mean, really almost anything you can think of, we have an advisor who specializes in it. And I think that really plays into kind of what we're seeing in the industry, what consumers are demanding. So certainly a lot of mainline product, but one of the things that we try to do is to give encouragement to guide people to select a niche for their agency and then give them the tools they need to be successful in that niche.
Now, what services do you provide? I assume the usual marketing, technology, training to your hosted advisors.
Yeah, I probably don't have time to go through.
Yeah, that's a whole separate conversation. But in general, like you have different programs and you give them a platform, as you said.
I think some of the key pillars are, it starts with our orientation on onboarding process. So everything from live one-on-one welcome calls with our member success team to webinars for getting started to a 12-week launch program that really takes new advisors or new agency owners through a really tactical series of steps that we've seen over the years of these are the recommended actions that you need to take to be successful. Right. And then certainly our education platform has been huge. We have a tremendous offering of virtual courses and a training library, as well as in-person training events. We have a award-winning one-day sales and marketing training core summit. We have a 5-day accelerator course, which is designed for new agency owners or people looking for a business reboot. We have a 2-day luxury immersion training that really takes the fear out of approaching the luxury client. How do you position yourself as a luxury seller? Focuses on the key luxury products that are out there and a whole host of other education offerings. So those education is obviously really critical, whether you're brand new to the industry or even if you've been doing it for 25 years. There's always something new, and the demands of the consumer are continue to change. And then layered on top of that, we've made really big investments in our app suite. We have our award-winning WorldVIA Pro, which is our intelligence hub. We have our Pro CRM, which is free to all of our members. We have our sites platform, which is a really best-in-class website, travel website platform. And then marketing programs, as you said, we have our WorldVIA.com leisure consumer website that focuses on generating leads for our members. Mm-hmm. We have a proprietary system for leveraging the Travel Leaders Agent Profiler program, which has been really successful for our advisors. And then something called Dynamic Promotions, which is where we take a lot of our exclusive promotions with suppliers, group-based inventory, and we dynamically place those on our advisors' websites so they have a constant refresh of content.
That's cool.
On their site. So it's the whole ecosystem, for delivering value to folks in exchange for what is probably one of the lowest fee structures in the industry. And so we think that's a really great way to add value to folks' businesses. And then the real secret sauce, is our service culture. So as we've grown, we've really placed an emphasis on maintaining that small town value, approachability that has always been our hallmark back to our Travel Quest roots, and figuring out how to do that as we continue to grow. And that's been something that helps to connect our community of advisors. And that's our secret sauce, but the support levels and then that community of advisors, which is just really unique in the business, I think.
No, it sounds like you got a great group there now. Now, you mentioned you have the host, but you have other businesses too as part of WorldVIA Group?
We do. So Safe Harbors is our corporate TMC. Again, focuses a lot on mid-sized corporate and humanitarian organizations. We have a dedicated humanitarian business called Ministry Travel, where we work with charitable organizations, humanitarian relief organizations, where we do logistics and travel related to relief efforts and mission work. And then we have a consumer leisure media company in WorldVIA.com that is developing leisure content, really with the outcome of generating leads for our advisor network.
Let's talk a little bit about, well, first of all, you just had your annual conference, right?
We did.
Did a lot of advisors attend?
Yeah, so it was our fifth annual World Conference. So that was a fun hallmark. We had it in just outside of San Diego in
Okay.
September, and we had about 250 advisors there. It wasn't our biggest conference ever, but it was definitely our best. And we hadn't been out on the West Coast before. Most of our advisors are in the Midwest and East Coast and Southeast. But we have a growing number of advisors on the West Coast. So we wanted to bring it out West and make it a little easier for them to attend. But it was really terrific. Next year, we'll be going to Dallas Fort Worth in September, and we're already looking forward to what we think will be our an even bigger and even better event next year. But it was a lot of fun, and by all accounts, it really was our best event ever. And one of the things that made it great, and conferences, different hosts and different consortia, they do different things. And while there's a lot of similarities, I think there's a couple things that we do that makes our conference a little unique. And one of them is, the peer sharing experience is always one of the things you bring out of a conference that is usually one of the highlights. And so we take some unique approaches to how we structure that kind of networking and shared knowledge transfer. And so that was really successful. And the other thing we put a pretty big emphasis on, in addition to supplier updates and rolling out new programs, we do a lot of business training at our World Conference. So everything from sales and marketing to business planning and risk mitigation, and tactical ways to implement new technologies like AI. So we did a number of courses on that. So a lot of non-travel training, because as an independent agency owner, travel knowledge is only one piece of the puzzle. You really have to understand how to be an entrepreneur and how to grow a business to be really successful. And so that's what we want to see people do. So that's where we place our effort.
No, that's great. Now, I guess you believe, as most people believe today, that being a travel advisor is really a great profession, and being a travel agency owner is lucrative, right?
I think so. I mean, those two things are separate, right? I mean, it's certainly a great profession. As I said earlier, I don't think there's any more industry out there that's more fun. And we probably get to create more joy for people than any other business. So the profession itself is an enjoyable one for the most part. Now, is it lucrative? And that's where I think you get into, are you investing in your education? Are you building your skills in sales and marketing, and adequately using technology, and you got to pull all those pieces together. I mean, travel is definitely not a get rich quick scheme, but I've definitely seen, personally, scores of people who have built a tremendous living, and many of them real wealth in this business. So it's definitely one that I think is really attractive. And, unlike a lot of businesses that you might start, whether it's, opening a restaurant or buying a franchise of this or that, travel is one that you can start part-time. And we see a lot of our advisors doing that. And I got to tell you, there's no cooler, more fun moment in our office every week than when we get a phone call or an email from one of our advisors who started part-time, and they're letting us know that they've quit their full-time job and they're focusing on their travel business full-time. It's like one of those ring the bell moments. And just to be, a small part of that story, of that journey, it's just so cool. So it is something people can step into gradually, which is different than a lot of businesses you might start that might require, big investment or certainly full efforts on day one. This is something you can, get started with relatively little capital and real sweat equity.
Although you do have to work, it's not an easy
no
job.
doubt.
It's I tell people all the time, what do you think of a job that can earn six figures? You're selling something people love. Your time is your own. You can have your own business, because sometimes a lot of them are independent contractors. And oh, by the way, you can sort of travel pretty well. You want to travel with your clients to explore the products you sell. And people always say, "Oh, what's that job? What's that job?" And then the old answer was, "It's a travel agent." Now it's a travel advisor. And they look at you like you're, from Mars. He's like, they're not around, are they? And I said, they darn are. They really are. So you better get with the
Yeah.
program because a lot of people are discovering this. And, now it's one of the fastest growing professions. I think everybody wants to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. We've certainly seen demand coming into the industry. And I think it's great because, I'm amazed when we see new advisors who come into our network from literally all walks of life and all professional backgrounds. And whether they're coming from a Fortune 500 marketing department, or they're coming from being a school teacher, or they're coming from being a stay-at-home mom, or you name it. They all bring a unique perspective. They all bring a different aspect of America.
Yeah.
And I think it takes all of those kinds of backgrounds and ways of thinking about travel and what customers want to be successful, because customers are looking for even beyond travel experiences, they're looking to identify with their advisor in some ways.
Right.
And I think that it's a real interesting, shift from where things were pre-pandemic. We all know like the horror stories around some of the OTAs and, the big warehouse travel sellers that had some customer service issues. But it's been interesting to see consumers really building, real relationships with their advisors. And I think that's why you see people who are successful from all walks of life. And I think it's pretty cool.
Well, the impetus for this interview was initially you had put out a sort of a list of trends that you saw in the market. Then I wanted to know about your agency because I really never sat down with you to talk about it since when you purchased TravelQuest years ago. But let's talk about some of the trends you see in the market. What kind of travel is leading the way these days? I think you identified, at least in the stuff I saw, luxury cruises and kind of unique experiences.
Yeah, I mean, cruises certainly continue to fire on all cylinders. We're seeing, just tremendous growth there across all segments of cruising. And I think that largely is because there's a perception. I think it's an accurate perception that cruises are delivering a lot of value for the dollar. And tourists of all economic spectrums are looking for a high quality vacation experience, and cruises are delivering that. And they're increasing into new destinations. You're now seeing more and more variety of cruising. So there's a lot of different types of cruises and personalities, if you will.
Oh, sure. I love how you talk to consumers and you say, have you ever taken a cruise? And they say, I took one once. And then they try to remember the brand and they don't have a hard time remembering it's a big ship. And then you tell them, well, wait a minute, there's all this other stuff out there. Expedition is now in the ascendancy in recent years, right?
Oh, absolutely. Huge demand for some of the expedition lines and, destinations like the Galapagos and Antarctica and all sorts of things. But, I think, we're also seeing there's certainly a big trend towards unique experiences. And that sounds like you see that in headlines and travel stories all over. But what's really interesting is, we're getting to this place where the U.S. consumer is so used to a unique personalized offering across every aspect of their lives. And we see it in shopping, right? You go onto Amazon or eBay or Etsy, you can find exactly what you want, whether it's, even if it's not from them, it might be from one of their network sellers. And we're seeing personalized offers and suggestions. You've bought this, maybe you want that. And usually, not to get into, how algorithms and what people think of those, but they're often pretty accurate, scarily so. We see it in entertainment, right? Gone are the days where we have to watch what's on one of the big networks at night. So we're gone past even, hundreds of cable channels where we can stream literally anything we want from, halfway around the world whenever we want it. And again, offering suggestions around, well, you watch that, you might like this. We're seeing it in dining, most, and I'm not talking New York or LA, but most like mid-sized cities, it used to be the big chain restaurants and maybe a couple ethnic specialty restaurants, right? Now you go to any mid-sized city and you're seeing cuisine from literally all over the world.
Yeah.
Oh, and you get it delivered to your house by Uber Eats or one of DoorDash, right? So it's people in every walk of life. People are demanding not only things that are unique, but exactly what they want, when they want it, and personalized to their taste. And so we're seeing that in travel. And when we used to say, even just a few years ago, things like unique experiences or local immersion. You might think of something like, oh, you're going to take a bread baking class in Paris, right? Okay, great. That's not enough anymore. Yeah. People want something even more unique than that. And so one of the challenges as professional advisors is curating these experiences. And there's lots of companies and a lot of local providers that are working to offer these. But finding these truly unique experiences is kind of one where the challenge lays right now in providing that, because there's certainly demand for it, and so it's like a constant game of one-upsmanship where what was unique 2 years ago is no longer unique.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah, and it's
where we spend a lot of our time.
Yeah, well, and then one of the reasons why you need a good travel advisor who will do that
Absolutely.
research. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, you also identified sort of what you're calling the evolving travel landscape and also rising demand for, this is a little bit part of that last question, a more personalized travel. Can you explain those trends?
Yeah, again, I think it's the unique experience and the personalization, I think, have merged, right? And this is something I've been thinking about over the last several months. And it's now, I think, to a point where if you have an obscure interest, and I mentioned like polka band travel earlier, right?
That's the one I got to go for. I got to tell you, I'm really curious.
Well, when I first, we have, one of our members who runs that business, and that's where they focus, and tremendously successful. And when he first told me about it, I was a little dubious, as you might imagine. But we live in an age where, if you're a fan of something, and it could be, a sporting world, it could be, something in the arts, it could be any number of different things. If you're a fan of something or you're passionate about something, there's a travel experience that corresponds to that. Right. And more, there's an advisor or an agency who specializes in that. And so, the world of travel has gone way beyond one kind of cruise where the only thing to do in the afternoon was play bingo and the nightly show, right? People are demanding these kind of unique experiences, even from mainline mass market cruise providers and resort providers, where there's different activities geared to a huge variety of interests at every hour of the day. Sure. And so it's a tremendous challenge for travel suppliers to deliver that. It's a challenge for advisors to connect that. And the only way you can really do it is if you get hyper specialized, because that's what consumers are looking for. So I think those two things of unique experiences and personalization are kind of have merged, and that's just where we are as a society.
No, absolutely. And there really is. And again, more reasons to work with a professional travel advisor who can identify those experiences for you as a client. Now, you also are seeing more on a trend towards extended booking windows, you said, for hotels and cruises. Can you explain why this is happening? And really, does this indicate, I mean, we hate to talk about the pandemic again, because, it's now been 4 or 5 years and maybe we're over it, thank goodness. But does this indicate, back then, people were like booking right close in. They just wanted to get away, and there was that revenge travel. They want to do it right away. But are we back down to maybe, and I hate to say normal, but booking windows that are extended, people are planning in advance?
Yeah, generally I would say yes. I mean, I think the pandemic booking window phenomenon is past. That said, I think we're seeing something, right now, like in the last month, we've still seen each week of the last 4 weeks, 40% of our new bookings are for departing in 2024, which to me is not normal. No. Right? So it's suggesting there's an awful lot of people still looking to travel this year, and it's something I've been talking to our members about pretty regularly over the last month. And I have a theory. I don't have any data to support this, but I think what it is, we talk about election cycle impacts,
Yeah.
and historically it's been I'm going to put off travel until after the election, and we see some of that. We've heard that from advisors and from their clients, but I think part of what we're seeing on this little kind of spike in close in for 24 still is we're seeing people who, and this is happening on both sides of the aisle, that are afraid of the outcome of the election and what might happen because of it. So they're saying,
personally, I just want to book away to go abroad for the entire election, and maybe I'll come back and see what happened. But I'm so tired of it. It really, whatever side you are, we are all. It's like they're spending so much money, and all I want to say, that's the thing. Everybody used to say during presidential elections there was a downturn, and you're saying they're actually that really hasn't happened in this one, right?
Well, some people are saying I'm waiting, but I think more people are saying, well, I don't know what's going to happen, and I might not like it, so I'm going to travel now. And I think it's happening on both sides.
I think that's it. When your worst fear, when you're really worried about something, just go travel.
Yeah,
that's the way to get. Well, so you're seeing that. So you're seeing those bookings coming in on, at least lately, 24. Because I thought it would have said, people are actually planning for 25.
Yeah, well, that's certainly happening too. Our forward bookings for 25 and 6 are very strong, but there is this, resilient recent spike around, getting something done this year. So I think that's really interesting. There's probably a number of factors that are playing into that, but I think the election is one.
Now let's talk a little about another trend you identified is a high demand for certain destinations and then the alternatives. We've been talking about this for a while, over tourism, which was a big topic pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
And then pandemic came and nobody went to those destinations, and it was the best time to go, believe me, for those popular destinations. But there really is a focus on going other places and other seasons now for travel, right?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I mean, the tried and true, popular destinations, the Parises, the Romes, the Venices, Barcelona, we're seeing demand in, early spring, late fall, classic shoulder season stuff. And demand in those, I haven't seen any drop off even in peak seasons for those kinds of destinations. Like there's still demand there. And despite, the protests and things like that, I think the only real outcome of that will be there's greater likelihood on more visitor taxes and entry fees and those kinds of things, which, makes sense. They need to monetize that somehow. A lot of those areas don't have the most vibrant economies. And, it makes sense. But you are certainly seeing advisors directing people to some lesser known spots. It could be because the client is concerned, about crowds, or it could be just, hey, this is something kind of playing into what we were talking about with personalization. This is something that's unique that I think is going to suit your interests. And those are places. Certainly we're seeing huge demand for Asia, Japan, Korea, even places like Laos and Vietnam. Big demand for Morocco, Peru, Malta.
So you're saying that we're finding these alternatives to the big destinations. Although I have to say, I was in Paris right before the Olympics, and nobody was there. That was going to be just overcome.
Right. Like all the talk leading up to the Olympics was, don't go to Paris in the early summer, and then the early summer came, and everyone's like, well, Paris is empty.
That was
hotels are screaming for business, and
they were hurting there for a while, and everybody thought it'd be crazy. Now, hopefully, they got back to even better after the Olympics, but and I'm sure you've seen that trend too. Now, let's talk a little bit about one of the trends you said urging travelers should be much more aware of new travel regulations and how this will affect them. You mentioned something that I totally had forgotten is this European entry and exit scheme. Implemented next year. I didn't even know how that's going to work, honestly. Can you talk about that one?
Well, I with governments, I think you can never be certain. I think the only thing that I can be certain of is that over time, in Europe especially, I think you're going to see more entry fees, more city taxes, tourist taxes, as these countries and cities, or even regions in certain places, look to monetize tourism. They
Right.
know they have a valuable asset. They know there's demand for it. They know that demand is going to continue. And so I think they're looking to, address some real issues around
Yeah.
infrastructure spending and things like that. And again, some of these places that we're talking about, you know, they don't have really vibrant economies.
Yeah.
So not like we do here in the U.S. We're very fortunate that we do. So tourism is a big employment driver. They're not likely to, cut it off. I think what they're likely to do is continue to, make it more and more expensive. And, on the margin, does that stop some people from going? Maybe. So, in the long run,
Yeah, it's saying because
there,
it's probably a few $100s, but some people are going to do this. Some people say, regardless, I'm going to go. Yeah, my
yeah,
main issue is how do you pay that and where do you pay that? And at least that's where I'm confused, I guess, is when I have to do the Europe tax eventually, I'm not sure how that's going to work. And even going to individual destinations where they suddenly have to do a tax or something. And I was coming out of Mexico yesterday and I saw these guys saying tax. And I said, wait, I thought we got rid of that. Is it back? It isn't back to my knowledge, but this is the issue. You're confused about what I have to pay. It's like, well, it's the old days during the pandemic where you had to fill out the health questionnaire
right.
and it just, how do I do it? Because it's going to disrupt or complicate my travel plans, right?
It will complicate it, and for the advisor community, I think that's a net positive
Right.
because it's one more thing that a consumer says, oh well, I got to figure that out, right? And it's difficult if you're an advisor who has a real generalist business and you're trying to stay on top of this for 100 countries. But if you're a specialist and you're mostly working with Mexico, Caribbean, or you're mostly working Western Europe or et cetera, you know developing expertise and staying on top of those becomes much easier.
No, that's what it is. Again, another reason of detail that a travel advisor can help out with. And the other thing you talked about was the DOT has been increasing consumer advocacy. Last
Yeah,
week, they said they were going to investigate competition in the air travel industry. At this point, I'm surprised they waited this long. Although I do understand, I've been a good friend of mine is a consumer advocate, and no one knows what's going to happen out of that investigation. But between that and other things they've done in the last 6 months or something that have been much more for consumer advocacy. And travel advisors have been arguing about this for a while. That I know ASTA has been asking for an investigation about certain things that are going on in the business, and
yeah,
and I don't know how that's going to affect travel advisors and consumers, but we'll have to see.
yeah. I mean, generally, I think less regulation is better than more,
Right.
with one exception, and that's where there's certain industries that have huge barriers to entry. And the airlines are one of those, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't just if a particular airline, especially if they control a hub market,
Mhm.
is delivering a poor experience. I can't. It's almost impossible for a startup to say, okay, I'm going to start an airline and I'm going to compete. So they do have effective mini monopolies in a lot of these markets, and I think it's generally a good thing that the DOT is looking at protecting consumers. What we do need to make sure is that any regulation, in this industry or others, is carefully considered, so we don't have those unintended consequences. Because sometimes, as we pass new regulation, it sounds like a great idea, and then we realize, well, it impacted three other things that we didn't think of.
Yeah.
But again, I think there's cases where airlines have um, been the source of some unpleasant experiences, whether
Yeah.
that's undue delays and being stuck on the tarmac for a whole day, or whatever the case is. I'm generally glad to see some efforts to address those things.
Well, actually today I think is the day when now you can get your refund. You can get if you have been on the tarmac 2 or 3 hours or more, you're supposed to get your money right away. That was one thing, and of course the other thing affecting travel advisors is that refund rule that
Yeah.
put you all, you don't have the funds to refund clients, but the airlines do. And unfortunately, in the law, something got lost in the translation, and
Yeah.
you're still trying to get that back, right?
Yeah, that's a good example of the good work that ASTA does, and why everybody in this industry, whether you're an individual independent advisor or a big agency, really should be a member of ASTA, because they are kind of at the front line of that. And be very transparent. I'm not always the cheerleader for ASTA. I think there's things that ASTA can do differently.
Yeah.
But I think especially in that area of government relations and things like the DOT rule, ASTA is our best option as an industry to make sure those things are addressed.
No, absolutely, and it is a good reason. I think it's one of their main functions. Now, Jason, I want to thank you for taking the time. It's been a great conversation. Now, we go out to about 127,000 travel advisors now. Where can they go out and find out more about WorldVIA?
You can learn more about WorldVIA Travel Network at worldviatravelnetwork.com.
Okay.
You can learn more about our consumer site, worldvia.com, that generates leads for our network, and our corporate TMC at safeharbors.com.
Fantastic. Again, thank you so much for taking the time, and I hope we get together another time in person rather than on this. But for now, we'll do. Again, I'm James Shillinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.